I was trying to find my angle here on how this makes sense for all y'all, because again, we have such a different context, but let me give it a shot. Prescribed grazing. There are so many names and words for different types of grazing practices out there. You have intensive management grazing, holistic management, set stock grazing, targeted grazing, contract grazing, prescribed grazing, conservation grazing. Prescribed grazing in the eyes of NRCS could be looked at as targeted grazing, and I'll have to look at the language again, but there are conservation ranching practices, the CESP and EQIP, that actually will, in the state of Alaska, will compensate grazing operations for a prescriptive approach. That's more of that targeted grazing approach. So this is how it could be contextualized, or this is how you can relate to this in your own context. So we get paid to graze. You can see the homes up on the hillside. This is in Los Angeles. That's my livestock guardian dog, Nala. You can see a little bit of our electric fence. This is really highly intensive laborious work. We're building fences every day and moving them every other day, depending on what we're trying to achieve. We're watching the health of the animal and also the vegetation to be able to find that middle balance of, are we achieving our goal in this paddock or area? And that will help us to determine our stocking density, et cetera, et cetera. Again, this is Los Angeles, this is wild. I want you to kind of start thinking about, if there was grazing of sheep and goats in Alaska, what fancy place could we drop them off and get paid to graze? Think about that. But prescribed grazing, why are we using prescribed grazing? Well, guess what? In California, it is in the Public Resource Code that prescribed burn is a vegetation management approach that is paid for by CAL FIRE or the Board of Forestry. They're mandated to fund prescribed burns. That language is already adopted. So in 2023, I supported a bill to be authored by Senator Ramones called SB 675. And we worked for 2 years to get prescribed grazing in statute. So now CAL FIRE and the Board of Forestry is now mandated to consider goat sheep grazing not as just novel, but something they are mandated to fund at scale for community supported vegetation management. Again, in the context of Alaska, you have the CSP and the EQIP grants that might not have the same goals as biofuels reduction at populated areas, but for more conservation purposes, like in reducing encroachment of invasive species or watershed function, these types of management practices. You're definitely not going to get paid by NRCS as much as we do for this work, but if you are a staffed enterprise, or if your main objective is raising protein animals for food or fiber, which is lesser in the state, is my understanding, it's still nice to get a little bit paid on top for the way that we're managing our animals responsibly. So how is this different than set stock grazing? Well, I think that we could all agree that we understand the concept of the difference of impact when we are able to target and remove animals in mimicking the way that our wild herd animals move, which is typically with the seasons, what's going on with the forages, what's going on in our reproduction cycle of the animals. High intensity, high impact, low duration, because why? Grazing, overgrazing is not a result of too much impact, right? Overgrazing is a result of not enough rest. It's a result of not enough rest. And with that being said, we're able to be potentially in a big, large paddock with hard fences and see underutilized and overutilized forages. And that's because the animals are not necessarily targeted to move that typical wild herd style where you're bunched up, and a lot of that movement, not just following the seasons and the forage cycles, but they're actually responding to often the prey-predator relationship. And we do that on foot with humans, but also with border collies. We're able to move our animals in tight, big groups. So if we do not put our animals in small paddocks to have that impact, sometimes it's brush that we just need to get through, and it's not the grazing or browsing impact, it's actually the animal's body impact of crushing brush, simply. That is enough for some of our clients to actually get paid by the acre by just running your animals through that brush to break down thatch and crispy branches, fire fuel. So there's a lot of opportunities to get paid to graze through prescribed grazing. A lot of habitat restoration work is out there. Again, the CSP and EQIP may fund some of this prescribed grazing approach here. Stacked enterprises in food and fiber. Also, integrating livestock into crop systems as an alternative to inputs, bringing animals to feed instead of feed to animals. I do understand that there's a lot of forage, pasture development here. That's a very big, part of ag here. But in California, a lot of large-scale producers, sheep and goat producers, bring sheep to alfalfa stubble fields after the last cut. And the farmers are seeing the increase or understand the additional soil health co-benefit of having these animals in there instead of bringing inputs. So we're seeing a lot of integration of livestock into crop systems, as well as vineyards, as well as orchards. And then also the largest, most quickly, rapidly growing part of the prescribed grazing industry with small ruminants is solar grazing. I understand that that's not as much of an opportunity here, but it is something to note. This is really focused on kind of the brittle landscapes that I operate on. A lot of disturbed, devastated, or desertified landscapes is where we tend to get paid to graze as well. We're guided by seasonality and the earth's rhythms. We have to understand how we are going to utilize prescribed grazing for the advantage of the health of the animals, but also to achieve our goals as a service. Growing season versus non-growing season. We get paid to graze anywhere, depending on the year, 7 to 8 months out of the year. I have to park my animals and figure out how to feed them for 4 months when I don't get paid. So when I'm making the big bucks in the summer, say June and July, I always tell my shepherds, we're getting paid today, but we also have to get paid today to get paid for one of the days that we're not getting paid. They think I'm getting rich, and then I have to remind them that we have no cash flow for 4 months out of the year. So what's in the prescription? Like I said, it's the backbone of my work. We have to take into account all of the considerations of what forage type and what time of year we are managing or grazing a certain area. This is one of my beloved goats eating star thistle like popcorn. This stuff is what these guys get fat on fall and winter, and they just eat it. It's insane. This stuff is so pokey. I've seen it just like penetrate through a lip and they just articulate with their mouths and pull it back in. And cattle will get sick off of this. Equine will get sick off of this. I make my big bucks off of this stuff. This is an example of some of our fencing, like what our fencing looks like. You can imagine, it's obvious, I'm with some range and livestock folks here, so I don't have to go too deep. With this type of matrix, I'm able to target and then allow rest for those paddocks. I have seen insane pictures of grass today. Oh my gosh, I had no idea. I thought Alaska was under snow like all year round. Little did I know, I'm coming up here. You got grass, it's insane. But I'm from Southern California. I don't know how to be in cold for more than 20 minutes. I'm kind of pathetic. Just thinking about being cold this morning. Here's some examples of the before and after. We work in really steep, crazy terrain. The picture on the left Obviously, you can see the fence line, that was earlier in the year. That was in the summer, and behind you can see Six Flags, Magic Mountain, you can see those animals off the I-5. We often get paid to reduce fire fuels, but the most valuable thing that our firefighter clients and city and local governments, one of the most important values is actually public perception, the PR that they're doing something, and the education to the public about animals. Animals are an incredible way for people to observe landscapes in a different way. And it's so foreign to see animals in Los Angeles. A lot of kids don't even know the difference between a sheep and a goat, or a deer and a cow. But it's incredible when people see these animals, they start asking questions. What are they eating? Why are they eating? What animal is that? And we start being able to provide an opportunity for educating folks to start seeing it in a new way, but to start caring as well. If we can just create the conditions for people to start asking questions, to begin caring and supporting the cultural shift where we do not have the divides, that the fence is actually taken down. When we recognize that it's actually a part of a whole, we're managing watersheds. We're not managing a property line, because guess what? Nature, natural disaster does not care about mowing through your property line or your fence line. We have to start thinking about that and how we're managing communities as well. You can't see that. One was grazed, one side wasn't. That's one of the signs that I have in front of my operation on park. In park, someone can just take a little quick picture of that QR code, get a lot more information. Actually hired shepherds from people in the middle of Los Angeles who've come to want to become shepherds, which has been pretty cool. I give people a chance when a lot of other producers and raisers do not have the time to give new folks a chance. And I've actually had a successful outcome by giving people the opportunity to learn on the job. So this is all goal-oriented, right? Prescribed grazing, targeted grazing, prescribed, I think of a prescription of medicine, right? What makes a medicine? It's a compound of various things that's designed, developed to treat perhaps something that is a symptom. But what is that symptom? We're actually not trying to just take care of a symptom. The main goal is actually to address an underlying dysfunction in ecology. Because when you have an ecology imbalance, you actually have a more fire-safe ecology, or fire-ready ecology, or a more functioning watershed in an ecology. So that's actually what we're doing. We're getting paid to prevent fires. But actually, as shepherds, we're looking at remedying the dysfunction or the imbalance of natural functions. These are our compounds to develop our prescription. The rest period for the vegetation, the grazing period for the animal, stocking density for the paddock, stocking rate for the project, how many animals, how big is the area that we're to graze? How big are our paddocks? Are they 1 acre? Are they 15 acres? How long is that going to take us? The smaller the paddock, the tighter the density, the faster we will go. So if we have a project in 60 days, or if we have a big snowstorm, we can use these compounds in the prescription to try to nail and land where we need to, when we need to. And then we have plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. We have backup plans for eons because it always ends up in different directions. These are concepts you already know. Most of you are probably smarter than I am. I'm not going to spend time in this piece. But the stocking rate versus stocking density You can see this is something fun that I made, but I'm trying to make the point here. The tighter or smaller the paddock, the tighter the density. So we're going to be achieving more in our goals of higher impact, lower duration, high duration, low duration, high impact, high density. And we're able to achieve this using our electric fences. But guess what? This can also be achieved with all kinds of ruminants using the tool of that prey predator relationship in flight zones. It could be on the back of a horse, on a quad. This can be achieved in a lot of different ways, and it's actually my favorite time with my shepherds is actually let them out of the fence. We're walking 2 miles, and let's just let them graze along the way. And sometimes we'll decide, okay, we really want to nail this area. That's when we all use our tools to put more pressure on the animals. They get tight, and then we wait, take a little pressure off, and then they relax, and then they start grazing exactly where we want. That's setting the animals, spot grazing them. We call it circuit grazing. Sometimes we can't build fences in areas. We'll let the animals out. We'll define the whole boundary or perimeter of an area or a canyon, and we simply use the techniques of a shepherd with a dog or with one another to achieve the goals that we are able to achieve with electric fence, but we get to do it the fun way. Just really expensive for me to have 3 folks out there getting paid California wages, watching sheep. So these are all of the things when I come in and someone says, how much are you gonna charge me for this work? Well, in other contexts, perhaps here, I think it's really important if we do want to start looking at these types of targeted, more highly intense, laborious types of work, we actually have to really start thinking about mobile infrastructure. Where are we getting water? How are we getting water there? What are the complexities to build fence? Where are my shepherds gonna stay in the middle of Los Angeles in a park? Or is it too far out to be accessible, predatorous? Our predators are typically not, well, we do have mountain lions, we do have coyotes, the gray wolf is coming, but most terrifying are the 2-legged predators. And not necessarily because they're gonna come and steal my animals, but they might just sit there and ask so many questions that my shepherd wants to quit. The key takeaways with prescribed grazing, and I really do hope you found something that can be applicable to your own context, even if it is just some of the principles. I do hope that what it is, one of the biggest takeaways is that there is adapting innovative approaches for our work on the land with livestock to continue on in such uncertain and variable times. It is hard to make a living. The quality of life is incredibly hard. But if we can support each other, I have a very big team. We figured out how to make it work, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. It's like, how do you hire people and keep them on? And how do you find them? My hope is that you learn from some of these concepts to take into your own context. And if it's anything, it's understanding that there are crazy ways people are making this work in other places. And it takes diversity or that stacked, well, diversity is resilience, period, in biodiversity and ecologies, but also what makes cities and places so vibrant and interesting is diversity. But diversity in our business models and our land management models and our abilities to adapt and our ability to learn from the past, honor the past. Thank you for those who forged the way for us, but then also look into a future where the wildest, craziest ideas might actually be a solution for continuing on. I think I'll leave on the last piece, which is relationship. Your relationship to your animals, your relationship to the land that you're working, your relationship to the people that you're working with and for. These are all so incredibly important. So we can refine and define and really become more acute in our observation of all of the parts that make the whole. Is there any opportunity to consider grazing as a service in Alaska? I have no idea. I'd love to have that conversation with you, but I've spoken in Vermont and they have some cool needs for this. There's ski slopes. When there's no snow, what do those ski slopes do? Well, Vermont is in a drought right now. They've had tremendous fires in the Northeast this year. Prescribed grazing is actually a vegetation management tool that's starting to look more attractive in places that at once there was not the same type of fire concern under power lines, for example. As we're seeing less snow here in Alaska, maybe with more grass, yes, that's great. But that also means there could be more flashing fuels. There could be a future in which prescribed grazing for fire fuels management, forest management, defensible space around infrastructure and homes. This might be coming down the line as a part of the future in Alaska. That's my beloved number 23. Thank you so much for listening to me, y'all. Thank you.